Welcome back, or welcome to Grateful and Full of Greatness. I'm your host, Mark Glicini. On this podcast, I sit down with guests who, in my opinion, live their lives in pursuit of greatness. This platform allows me to discuss and to explain strategies that go into reaching peak performance. This is episode 31. My esteemed guest today is Sylvain Guimond, PhD. Sylvain is a world-renowned expert in posture and sports psychology, a distinguished inspirational speaker, as well as the president and founder of Biotonix, which we will certainly dive into throughout this conversation. He has evaluated, treated, and worked with over 1,000 elite athletes, including Greg Norman, John Smoltz, Mario Lemieux, and Tiger Woods. Sylvain has been a consultant for 5 NHL teams, including the Montreal Canadiens, who are currently in the Stanley Cup, as well as the NBA and NFL. From biomechanics to business, sports psychology to posture therapy, Sylvain Guimond is as accomplished as they come. Without further ado, let's jump in. Sylvain, thanks so much for coming on, and I'm excited for this conversation.
Great. I can't wait to talk to you, Mark. It's been nice. We got a conversation on the phone. I just love what you're doing, and I'm really impressed with what you achieved. So to me, to be sitting here facing you, it's a privilege.
I appreciate you saying that. I could always tell, even from a 30-minute conversation, to start off our friendship or relationship here, you're filled with so much gratitude, and I know you're going to be a great guest here. And I'm excited for listeners to learn from you, just because I've learned so much in the short time that we've known each other. So from our very first conversation, I was blown away by your insight on the connection between psychology and posture and personality. The idea and questions that stuck with me from that first conversation is, are we stressed because we have bad posture, or do we have bad posture because we're stressed? So I'd like to start off where it started for you. When did you get into sports psychology and posture, and why?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to say that I was an athlete myself, and I play in NCAA as a hockey player. I'm only 5'3", so you can imagine that I had to be quick, really fast, and not scared of everything. So I always thought that I was 6'4" in my head, but physically I was only 5'3", and I had a lot of I had great joy playing hockey, and I played for McGill University also. I did play in the States for SUNY State University of New York, and came back here. And then I decided to study in phys ed and do testing, all of the sports testing that we do, the VO2 max and strength, and the percentage of fat and all of the things that you already know. So I was and just before I did that, I did my first major was in applied spinal biomechanical engineering. So engineering of the spine, but it was very a great study that I've done, but at the same time was not very practical. Everything was so theory, but I had nothing to apply it. And I got injured playing hockey in McGill, decided to go to see a physiotherapist and other people that helped me out. And then I said, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life, trying to help athletes with back pain. And I went into doing my doctorate in osteopathic medicine. So after I've done that, I started to do a lot of work on posture and back pain, and to see that posture was responsible for most of the back pain that we have. And most back pain that we have is because we have to fight against gravity. But if you are perfectly balanced, you're not fighting with gravity. You're just standing straight, and your head is on top of your shoulders, and your pelvic tilt, everything is perfectly aligned. But in most sports, we do a lot of the exercise, or we do repetitive movement that are very asymmetric, like golfers and other sports like that. And I needed to recreate the balance in between the muscle strength. And one of the things that I was very impressed with was how we could recreate balance and posture by giving them exercise. So I decided to create a software a long time ago to do posture analysis. And this posture analysis was used by Olympic athletes, speed skaters. Speed skaters, they always skate on the same side, so they had a lot of asymmetric in their muscle. And I told the trainer, I said, we have to do exercise on the other side so that they stay balanced. And he told me, he said, Sylvain, listen, they've been like that, and I think it's helping them that they are already crooked in the sense that their center of mass is on one side. And I said, you know what? The worst thing that could happen to an athlete is to be injured. And if we keep on having them to be asymmetric, your athlete's going to be really good, but always injured. So, and when a muscle is used just to make you stand straight, you cannot use the 100% of that muscle to generate energy and to have a full contraction. So saying that, he said, okay, so let's start with our athletes. That's what we did. And I don't know if people remember, but in 1992, that's a long, long time ago. That's why I'm old. In 1994, the Winter Olympic Games were only 2 years apart because they didn't want to have the Summer Olympic Games and the Winter Olympic Games on the same year. That's what used to be the case before 1992. So in that years they started to say the winter sports are going to be on 1992, 1996, and so on. So 1994 was the first time that the Winter Olympic Games were only 2 years apart instead of being 4 years apart. So we needed to have our people to be ready for the 94 Olympic Games in only 2 years instead of having 4 years to get them to be ready there. And I said to them, that's a great moment for us to try that new asymmetric training so that we can keep them to be really symmetric in function. Their function should be symmetric. That's what we did. And in that year, we didn't have any injury in our in-track sports skaters. And the Prince Albert of Monaco used to do bobsleigh. I don't know if people remember that, but he went to the Olympic with Monaco as a bobsleigh. And he looked at the athletes we had and they said, well, these people are so strong. Their legs are so strong. He said, that's what I need too. So he started to do a strength training program to get more power in his leg. And he saw that these people were doing this program that was asymmetric to them to get them to be balanced. And he says, oh, this is amazing. And he started to have back pain. So I did the testing on him, and he was the one who opened the door for me in 1996 for the Summer Games in Atlanta at that time. So I went there, presented to people what my software did, and I sold a lot of software around the world, and that's how it started. And I decided after that when I see someone's posture, it looks to me like I can almost tell you their personality. The way you stand tells a lot about you, who you are. And when I met with Dr. Christina Varsari, that we both know very well, she changed my life by telling me that she has done a lot of research on personality types. And I told her, I said, you see, when I look at someone standing physically, I can almost tell you if this person is extroverted or introverted. There's so many things that talks to me. And that's how we can face stress, the way we are with our personality, also the way we face how much we are stressed. So the question you asked me to start with was, is because we have a bad posture that we are stressed out, or because we are stressed that we had a bad posture? Well, Mark, your question was great because it's both. It goes both ways. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a physical stress or a mental stress. So the muscle will contract because it's like we have to face uncertainty, and we have to face a lot of fear, and your muscle will contract at that time. So when I'm stressed out, of course my muscles are contracted because I have to either fight or fight, flight or fight, as we say, and this will have the muscle to be contracted. If my posture is not good, well, the muscles that are already too strong are going to be even more contracted, and most of back pain come from contracted muscles. There's a lot of lactic acid in that muscle, and that contraction cannot just release. There's no release. So on a long run, you got a lot of pain started with the back contraction of some muscle in your back. and I wanted to show if there was a link in between posture, personality, and pain. And
Mm.
that's my PhD research was on posture, personality, and pain, and we came up with that big and strong link in between those three P: posture, personality, and pain. So yes, to answer your question, I went a long way around to answer that
Sure.
question, but yes, there's a link between your physical stress and mental stress. And when we say we are relaxed in our brain, we say also I'm relaxed physically. It goes both ways, and that's why I always believe that we should never separate our brain from our body.
Mm.
We should never say mental illness or physical illness, but just say illness. We
Mm.
should never say mental health or physical health, but just say health. To
Mm.
me, it doesn't make sense because I have never seen anyone going to the doctors and say, "Hey, doc, my head's not going too well, so I'm going to leave my head here and I'm going to come back and pick it up in 2 weeks." There's no way you can do that, right?
Right.
So why do we do that when we talk about mental illness or physical illness? Because as soon as we say to people, how many people here, when I give a conference, I ask people in the room, how many people here had ever had back pain? Well, I have to say that it's 80% of people will raise their hand because
Mm.
that's the reality. 4 people out of 5 had, will, or have back pain. So it's touching all of us because we decided to stand up. And because of that reason, there's only a small base of support according to our body than when we are erect. So when I'm asking those questions, no one is afraid to say that they have back pain. But as soon as I say, okay, how many of you have ever had depression or burnout? And then nobody raised their hands and they look around before, and then sometimes they raise their hand, but just a bit like this. And I'm like, well, you know what? This is funny because in Canada only 64% of people have taken antidepressant pills
Mm.
or anxiety pills. And I'm asking people, if you're not taking these pills, who are they taking them? Your dogs? That's why your dogs are going with their tails like that. They're taking antidepressant pills. And that's where I'd like to say that there's 3 times more women than men that have depression or a diagnostic with burned out. 3 times more women than men. And Mark, it's sad, but there's 3 times more men than women that are taking their life away. So we talk about sports and all kinds of things, but we don't talk about our emotion that much. But women, they can do that. And to me, what scares me the most is not a man who cries; it's a man who doesn't cry.
Mm.
And I think it has to change. And we have to teach our younger men to be able to be closer to their emotion and talk about those emotions so that they can be out of that crisis of having depression. Depression is probably the worst illness that you can have in your life, and it's the most suffering one. Why? Because that's the only one where people will take their life away just to stop suffering. So we got to help people on that. But how can I be helped when I cannot even talk about it?
Mm.
Only way to get out of this is to talk about it. But who can I talk to if I'm afraid to be judged?
Right. I there's so much to unpack there, Sylvain. And what I would say is, I was so uh, into strength and conditioning in high school. Then I had my first mental coach when I was in college. And then when I created my own company, I said that you have to see the holistic approach to health. Yeah, it's all connected, all interwebbed. One of the things that I'm going all the way back in your answer is it was pretty cool to see that you're all about the size of the fight in the dog, not the size of the dog in a fight, 5'3", playing 6'4". It's something that I talk to family, friends, and clients about. When you feel small, you have to act big. And there's a lot of confidence that comes from that. I came up with this idea that it's so important in life to emulate until you can innovate. And it's clear that you've done that from physical education to biomechanics. And now you're on the forefront, the edge. It's something that I really want to get into today is that interconnection between pain, posture, psychology, because it's so true. Even the statistics that you're giving us are so powerful. Perhaps this is a great segue for you to talk a little bit about Biotonix, like with a mission behind it and what it's all about.
Yeah, when I went to McGill, I already had a background in biomechanics. So I got to McGill playing hockey for McGill University in Montreal, and um, at that time I started to work in the kinesiology lab doing biomechanic testing and also exercise physiology testing. And at that time, it was in the late 80s. So that's a long time ago. That's almost like 35 years ago, and computer was not that big at that time, and it was just started to have easy access to have personal computer. And I said to myself, it doesn't make sense that we gather all of those information on athletes and we don't have anything to do testing with them. And and because I didn't speak English much when I went to the States, I was 19 years old. I had injury to play hockey, and but I had an offer to play hockey in the States and having a full scholarship to play NCAA. And at that time when I went there, I knew yes, no, and cowboy. That's the three words I knew in English at that time. And I said to myself, okay, if I'm gonna take classes, I have to take class with that has a lot of math involved, because math, if you are doing maths, you don't need that much to talk. And I took computer science. Um, Instead of taking free electives in other field, I took health and science and computer science. When I came back from that course, I knew how to create software, and got to McGill and do testing on a lot of top athletes, because the lab that we had in McGill was amazing and great teachers, and I was very privileged to be in McGill. In McGill, for us, it's like you guys, your Harvard University. It's ranked number first university in Canada, and for me, who had a lot of problem learning in school because I was dyslexic, and just a problem learning and writing, and I was really bad in school when I was younger, and I still have a lot of problem with reading and writing. And to me, to be there with those people, I was privileged to be there. So I decided to do a computer science program to test reflex. And you'll be laughing at this because you're a top lacrosse player. Reflex in sport is so important because this is key, and we don't test that very often. And actually, that's what makes the difference between a great player and a good player. It's how fast can you react from a decision making. And in decision making that we have to make, there's three kinds of decision making. The first one is what I call pure reflex. You see something, you just have a reflex to what you just saw, and you react. The second one is reflex with decision making. So I see something, but I have to make a decision. And the third one is reflex, decision making, and coordination. So how can I coordinate all of that? And to me, this idea of testing those three components was key. So I decided to create a software that would do that. And my first people that I was supposed to work with were gymnastics. So I said to my teacher, I love gymnastics. I love these athletes. They're so great athletes. But at the same time, we had two groups to do testing on. Either we had testing on gymnastics player, gymnastics athletes, or we had race car driver. I told my teacher at that point, I said he was a sports psychologist and the other one was an exercise physiologist. I told them, I said, hey guys, listen, I don't want to work with car drivers, because I mean, all they have to do is to push on a pedal. I want to work with athletes. And they looked at me and I was like, they say, you don't know what you're talking about, so you're going to be responsible for the pilot. So instead of sending me to the gymnastic people, they send me to the formula, the ND driving car, ND car drivers.
Yes.
The Formula ND,
Mm.
ND car. So got to do testing on them. So all of them were come in, and we would do the VO2 max, the strength, the endurance, the power, the also testing on lactic acid, and all of these testing that we used to do. And I told them, I said, why don't we do a test on reflex with them? And they say, okay, how would you do that? Well, simple enough. We have computer. So there's going to be something that will appear on the screen, and when they see that, all they have to do is to click on the space bar, and as soon as they see it, they click. So the reflex will see in between what they see and how fast they react. That this first was just pure reflex. That's simple enough to do. The second one was, okay, we'll give them this this decision to make. You only press on it if the color is blue or white or whatever color we put on the dot. So we're going to show them one color, and if it's the right color, they have to press. If they press too fast because they haven't they try to beat the clock, but at the same time they didn't see clearly what color they had to click. Then we'll see how much mistake they make, and how fast they can be in making decisions. The last one was, we had a mouse like this, so we'll show them something on the screen, but not only they have to click on, but they have to follow the mouse wherever it goes. They have to stay in contact. If the mouse doesn't stay in contact, not only they didn't have good reflex, but they don't have eye coordination that are very high. So did that. This software was sold to a private company. I didn't make any money because I was a student at that time, and I said to myself, "Oh, that doesn't make sense. I'm creating something, but I'll never make money out of that." So my brother said, "Why don't you start your own business?" He lent me $1,000, and I started the business that's called Biotonix. Biotonix became twice in a row to be the American Medical Review for the best medical software in the States. So having all of that under my belt, we gathered with Procter and Gamble and a division called Gray Advertising. They got with me, and we were able to go further in creating more software. Then I got back Biotonix all by myself and decided to put the neuroscience in the biomechanics. So Biotonix is a link in between the neuroscience and the sports psychology or performance psychology, as you wish to, how you'd like to say it, and the biomechanics. And all of that gives you a BTX age. When I'm testing you, I can tell you how old you are compared to other Americans, and tell you exactly where you stand, posture wise, physically wise, and also your mental functional. How quick are you, and what's going on in your brain, in a sense of, and if you had concussions and things like that. There's a lot of things we can see when we do those testing in neural feedback.
Pretty amazing. One of the things I want to bring up is the fact that you were working with Indy car racers, and I heard Kurt Busch, a NASCAR driver, speak about a quote that Mario Andretti once said, that if everything seems calm, then you're not going fast enough. So I think it's a little bit more than pushing a pedal, huh? Rather than just going up and down.
Mark, I have to say, they made me swallow my words. I was so impressed by these athletes. I mean, the reflex wise, they were faster than any other athletes in any other discipline. Also, you have to remember that in their cockpit, as they are driving so fast, the heat inside is so high that their waste, they lose a lot of water, and they, before and after a race, they can lose 5 pounds, and that's just to say how much energy that's asking. And also when they have to also fight against again the G force, the G force is so high. The neck and the strength that they have just to be able to do that is, and not to say all of the mental strength that they need just to be able to get into the limit of, if and I remember they say, I asked them, are you afraid something? And they say, we have to. If you're not, you're gonna die. So it's in between confidence and being fair, and be scared, but where do you draw the line? And that's, they always stay on the edge, and that's really tough physically and mentally. So I really enjoy working with them, and I was so impressed by these top complete athletes, I would say.
Yeah, I would say when it comes to mental performance in general, one of the things that I love to kind of just define it as is how do you be intense without being tense? How do you stay calm in an uncalm place? How do you perform your best when it means the most? And I think to understand that pressure is very, very real, and to do it afraid is a really great idea, because no, there's never going to be a time where the fear is non-existent. I want to dive into your story a little bit, Sylvain, and ask you, you brought up before that you were dyslexic. I just listened to a podcast where the CEO of JetBlue Airlines had grown up all his life with ADD. And he talked about how, although it was a really breakdown at the moment, understanding that it allows him to do such great things like the decision making as a CEO. So one of the things I want to ask you is, could you share a little bit about your early life, the chapters of that, and what it was like growing up?
Yeah.
You said to me that it wasn't, that school didn't come easy to you, but perhaps how did that influence who you are today and what you do
Yeah.
now?
Well, I have to say that I come from a family of eight. So I have seven brothers, and
Hmm.
my brothers are so ugly, you wouldn't believe it. They're so ugly. So then when my parents, they had me, they went like, oh shit, this one is good looking. Let's have eight. So I'm the eighth one. The other one were so ugly. They were trials, trials. My parents were just making trials and trials until they had me. And
did
then,
they,
oh,
did they
let's
just have bad posture, or were they really ugly?
oh, they were really ugly. Can you see my face? I'm ugly myself. Could you believe my brothers are even uglier than me? So, and so to me, my parents, they gave me beauty. And to my brothers, they give them the intelligence. So
Mm.
my brothers were so intelligent, they would skip school grade, and they would skip ahead in grade in school. I did that too, but backwards. So I was in grade three in elementary school. I failed. And my parents were so discouraged. They say, "Well, we don't get it because all of the other ones that had a very easy time in school, and to me it was a tough time." But my mom and dad, I come from a family of loving parents. My
Mm.
parents, they just passed away this year, and my
Very
mom
sorry.
2 years ago, and my dad this year. But he was 96, so they had a great life together. They spent 72 years together, and in love like you wouldn't believe. So to me, it was a great gift, and I never felt different from my brothers. They loved me as much as all of my other brothers, and they gave me that love that I needed. Even though I had a lot of problems in school, they never judged me in any sense, and they just wanted me to be happy and to be successful. So they decided to hire a teacher, but we were so poor, Mark, that the only day that I was dressed exactly like the other kids in school was on Halloween day.
Wow.
So I said, how are they going to pay for the schooling and having a private teacher? They went to a nun, and this nun says, I'm going to help him free. And her name was Rita Lenoir. She had me do a math problem. I was at that time, I was in high school, and I still had struggling with school. And she had me do a math problem, and she looked at me, and it took me a long time to find the answer. But instead of telling me that I was slow, she said, you are very creative. So
Wow.
it's better to say to someone you're creative than slow. And I believed her, and it changed my life. I'm always saying to people, words can kill or words can cure.
Mm.
Depends, how you are using words. And this, that she told me that I was creative and not slow. It was the first time that in school I got some reward in the sense of, okay, I think you're smart. And she said, you are smarter than most people, but it's just that your brain doesn't work the same way. So let's try to get you to get at your best with what you already have. And she changed my life by just giving me back this confidence that I needed. Because when you have problem in school or in sport, the first thing that goes down is your self-esteem, because you
Sure.
compare yourself all the time. That's what self-esteem is. It's comparison of yourself with other people. That's why it's called esteem. If you go to to buy a house, you'll ask what's the esteem of the house, how much is the house cost. That's how you evaluate the price. So the price of human being is just self-esteem. That's how. What is the price
Mm.
that I put on myself? And we all compare ourselves all the time. I mean, it's human nature to do that. We don't. I don't know why do that. We do that. We shouldn't do. We should not do that. But we do that all the time. You play sports. You compare yourself. Where do I stand here in this team? Am I the best, the worst? Where? And right away, who are the best player in the team? Who are the good one? And we do that all the time. The second thing that we need is self confidence.
Mm.
Self-esteem is the value that I put on myself. The self-confidence is what can I do. This is the evaluation of the task that I have to do. And if my self-esteem is high, then my self-confidence get higher because I know that I can do it, because I'm not afraid to try things because it doesn't define who I am. Even though there's mistakes or I make mistakes, it doesn't define who I am. I define myself with the person that I am myself. That's how I define myself. I don't define myself on success or failure. I define myself on who I am, and the success will just define how people are perceiving me, and but not me. It doesn't have anything to do with me, because when I'm trying things, of course I'm going to make mistakes, but that's only one way to learn things, and it doesn't define me in a sense. I'm not a failure. I just make some mistakes, and I always tell kids in school, I hope you're going to have some failures in your life and early in life so that you can learn from those failures. And if you're not a failure, you're just a way to learn how to get there. And what I'm afraid of, Mark, is when you see kids that everything is go so smooth and they have always straight A's, and they got a girlfriend, and then 18 years old, and then the first heartbreak that they have, that's it. They take their life away because they never learn how to fail. This is so important. And the last thing is yourself. Is your self image. What what are you showing and how people see you? So when I was younger, of course I compare myself with my brothers and other people, but this way of telling me that I was creative, and that I could do a lot of things, and that she thought that I was smart, having this compliment that I was not used to, not coming from a teacher, it changed my life. And then it redefined who I was, even though I had problem with dyslexia and dysorthographia, and also ADD myself. Uh, and that probably had created who I am as way of thinking differently,
Yeah.
and probably using my brain in different ways. And when I met with my wife, she's a neuropsychologist, and she does testing on the brain. And she told me, she told me everything that was wrong with my brain, but at the same time she said that makes you who you are. I mean, you find other ways of doing things because of those uh, of those problems that you have. So sometimes problem give you another way of doing things, and it gets you to be more unique that you can ever be. So in a sense, to me today, I can look back in my life and say, well, it was not easy, but at the same time, it makes me who I am. I learn how to perceive, to be persistent, to always work really hard, because I have to study twice as much as all of
Mm.
the other kids in the school, and it gives me the personality type to be a CEO, and also to understand other people. When you have problem yourself, you are very a lot more open to other people problem. I think that when people are going through tough time, it helps them being um, more loving and caring for other people. That's how I see it.
Yeah, when I was preparing for this conversation with you, I listened to your presentation on the power of resilience, on anxiety, and I do remember you talking about how you'll remember 10% of what you read,
Yes.
20% of what you heard, 30% of what you've seen, 50% of what you've seen and read, if I'm correct here, and then 80% of what is said to you. and then 90% of what you do. And in your answer right there, I love how you didn't shy away from bringing up love. I think it's an important thing to talk about. Somebody once said to me that suicide, the definition of it is a permanent ending to a temporary problem. And I think that's why it's so important that the discussions that we're having are so important, and that we continue to push the rock forward, because there are strategies, there are techniques, there are practices like Rita did for you, in which you can really instill a higher value on a person through compliments. And whether it's the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, or 1 Minute Manager, I know it's talked about catch someone doing something right rather than always catching them doing something wrong and saying you're flawed, you're flawed, you're flawed. It's so important to give that compliment.
We always have to work on our strength and just address our weakness, because you never get really good in something you're weak in. You get okay, but you never get good. You get great and outstanding in something that you are already outstanding. When I'm looking at kids that come to see me and say, "Oh, well, I'd like to play in the NHL one day," they tell me that. So I said, "Okay, are you good?" That's the first question I asked them. "Yeah, I'm good." "Okay, what are you really good at?" I said, I really skate fast. So I said, "Okay, tomorrow morning, work on your skating." And they look at me and they say, "This is my biggest strength." That's it. Because that's what they will see, how fast you skate. They'll not look at, no one will pick you, no one will draft you because you're not really good with the puck. They'll draft you because you're fast. So make that strength to be outstanding. And that's why I say it's important to know ourselves, and to know who we are in order to put emphasis on the things that we are already good. Of course, the weakness that we have to address them, and not make in a way that these are going to be a problem in a way when you're going to some places and aim for something. But that should not be where you put your attention. We always should be put our attention on something we're good, because you know what? We define ourselves how much people love us and tell us how well you good you are. You're so great in this and this. So it makes you happy, of course, because we are not, even though we are top athletes, no one is. When you say something nice about someone, it always pleases them, and when you say something nasty, it always make them sad. And no matter what they say, when they say to top athletes, I don't read newspaper, I don't watch TV, I don't listen to radio, I don't listen to what people are saying about me. That's full of shit. I hope people knows that. Every athlete is aware of what's telling about them, and if it's nice, they feel great, and if it's not, well, they feel sad. So in a sense, what people are saying about us, it's important. That's why we have to be careful of how we judge people and what we say about them, and how we take them to inside. Because I'm not responsible for what you tell me, but I'm responsible for how I take it. That's my responsibility. If you say something that is nasty and that is not nice, I have to tell you, "I'm sorry, Mark, that doesn't belong to me. I'm gonna give it back to you." If you can do that, that's even perfect. So sometimes people will say, "You know what? I'm sorry. That's not what I wanted to say," and they'll reframe what they're saying. But when you keep it inside, it doesn't belong to you. So don't keep it inside. Write that on a piece of paper and say, "Okay, someone told me that I was fat." Great. Write that down and burn that paper. Do the same thing with your kids. Every time your kid seems to be unhappy when they come home and say, "Well, what happened?" "Well, in school, they told me I was fat." And blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let's write that down and burn that paper. We don't keep things that are not belonging to us.
Right.
That's key, just to live our life. Life is short. Life is very short. You only have a one day that you were born, and you're gonna die another day. You know, and we are only here for a dash in between, because when you die, they put your name on a stone, and your birthday, and a dash in the middle, and how when you died. And we are here to make us just that small dash. And life is beautiful because it's tough.
I love
Life
that.
is beautiful because there's wonderful day.
Hey,
And without the dark and the light, you wouldn't be able to be happy, because we need some darkness and some times that are tough to just enjoy even more when it's nice. I'm always saying to people, life it's like exactly like going to eat to your mother-in-law. Go to eat to her place. the food is not as good as your mom's place. But taste the food when you are there. So
Right.
then when you come back home and you have comfort food with your mom, it feels even better.
Right.
So when there's tough time, don't try to hide yourself. Just live through it. Cry everything you have to cry, yell, whatever you have to do it.
Right.
And then when you're happy, don't think that it's going to finish one day. Just live that it's never going to finish, and be as happy as you can be during that day. That will make your life to be worthwhile, like that's what life is all about.
Yeah, I love your metaphors of the oscillations of life, the dichotomy of life. I wish I had you in my life 10 years ago. I got a stress fracture in my L2, L4, and I think it was something that was a breakdown for me that led to a breakthrough in the fact that I started to take care of my mind and my body and my heart and my emotional and spiritual health a lot more. One of the things that I want to go back to is you talked about writing things down and burning that, right? I used to, especially when I was going through that time, write a lot of poetry. And that was something that was really great at getting words down that didn't belong to me inside. It was something that I could turn judgmental conversations into curiosity, write it down. And I think it's so important. You brought up Rita's love for you, the nun. I think it's so important to talk about belief. And then when you brought up earlier the difference between banking on your strengths versus working on your weaknesses, something that I'd love to talk with our mutual mentor, Dr. Christina Versari, about is how our greatest strength and weaknesses are the same. So if I was to flip that over onto you, Sylvain, and ask you that question, what is your greatest strength and weakness that happen to be the same in your life?
I think my greatest strength is to be happy and to love everyone and never be. Uh, I never look at people's dark side, and because of that, sometimes I got people that are not with great intention that come to me because I'm open. It also brings different people that are would just like to be around me for to get to know famous people or people like that. And to me, working with these people like Celine Dion and Tiger Woods and all of these people, this is a privilege. But this is a privilege that I take very good care of. Uh, these people don't have a private life, and when I'm with them, I want to make sure that that's how they feel. They're completely the private.
Mm.
That's why some of the people that are getting to this level, they are taking drugs, and the reason why they do that because they're famous and rich. And you say, wow, why don't they destroy themselves? It's because they lose their private identity. They have a public identity. They know who they are to the public, but to themselves, they don't know who they are anymore. And losing your personal identity is probably the worst the worst thing that can happen to someone. And that's easy enough to understand that emptiness of not knowing who I am anymore. That I don't own my own life. My life is owned by everyone except me. This emptiness, this is so painful for them that they filled with drugs that are just putting them not numb, and one day they die from an overdose somewhere.
Right.
And that is sad because no matter what you do outside, you always have to keep inside a strong sense of belonging and knowing and your self identity. That is key, and that is self love. How do you love yourself?
Can you talk about two things? One, I had that logo, the importance of the logo in the Montreal Canadiens locker room. Can you tell that story?
Well, that's a good story. Um, uh, 2 years before Marc Bergevin was hired by the Canadian, I had to do an interview with him. In Canada, here I work on TV. I had a TV show, and we go around. And we have like it's called for you TSN. We have RDS,
Mm.
and I'm traveling, and I did an interview with Mark. And I told Mark, I said, Mark, what would you do if they ask you to be the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens? Oh, he said, oh, that would be an honor, but it's never gonna happen, because to him it was like too big. But after that, they hired him just after 1 year after my interview. So when he got the job, my good friend Michel Terrien, who used to be a coach in the NHL, used to coach in the Montreal Canadiens for 10 years, 10 years in advance before that. He said, Sylvain, I'd like to go back and coach the Canadian. Can you help me with my interview? I'm going to an interview with Mark, and I'd like you to help me out. And I said to Michel, of course I'll help you. So come to my house and we'll prepare you for your interview. So he came in with a big box of all kinds of paper. What would be the how he would what would be the plan for his team and how he would coach them and what he would do. And I said, listen, that's not what they're going to ask you. They're going to ask you, who are you, Michel Terrien? And then he said, you know what? And I asked him one question. I said, Mark, Michel, why would why do you think that you will never get the job? He said, because I coached here 10 years ago, they're never going to give me a second chance. They're going to give it someone else another chance. And I said, you are so dumb. I said, stand up and ask me the question. I'll pretend I am Michel Terrien, I said, ask me who I am. I'll tell you who I am. Because when I asked you, I said, "Who are you?" He said, "Oh, I'm very loyal. I'm tough, but I'm fair." And I said, I said, Michel, they're all gonna say that. Do you think that one of the coach that want to have the job to say, well, "I'm not loyal. I'm not fair"? They're all gonna say that. So you're never gonna get the job. Are you stupid, man? I said, stand up and ask me the same question. I'll pretend I'm Michel Terrien. So he stand up and he asked me, he said, who are you, Michel Terrien? I said, I'm Michel Terrien. I coached here 10 years ago. I went back to the American League and coached there, and I won everything I have to win. I went back to coach the Penguin Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Penguin, and I brought my team close to the Stanley Cup twice. But the second time, just before the playoff, I lost my job. But I saw my team winning the Stanley Cup. I saw my team winning the Stanley Cup. But you know where? You know what? I don't care because there's only one place I want to win the Stanley Cup, and it's here in Montreal. Do you have any more question for me? And that's how he got the job. And actually, that's how he did his interview. So when he got the job, he hired me to be the sports psychologist for the team.
Mm.
So Mark, Michel, and myself, we were visiting the dressing room. And as we got into the dressing room, we didn't have a logo in the middle of the dressing room. Every place that I work with, like the Dallas Star, I work with New York, Pittsburgh. They all have their logo in the middle of the dressing room. Every team has that. It's like logo is, you know what it is. You can not step on it. There's so many rules around that. That's because it's our identity. That's so important. But the Montreal Canadiens has won 24 Stanley Cup. This is the oldest hockey team in the world. We didn't even have a logo in the middle of the dressing room. I said to Mark, hey, Mark and Mike, it doesn't make sense, guys. How come you don't have our logo? And Mark says, you're right, we should change that. So Mark and Michel decided to change the carpet and make sure we had a logo in the middle of the dressing room. So when I'm talking to all of the athletes, the logo for a team is what is, linking us all together and gluing to the glue that makes a team. When I'm talking to an athlete, an individual athlete, it's the same thing with the logo of who he is. The logo is the meaning of who you are, and I will always remember that Viktor Frankl. For those of you who love reading, Viktor was put in a concentration camp during the Second World War, and he was doing his PhD in psychology. And it was written in his thesis. When they arrested him, they burned his thesis, and he forgot to put that on a USB key. It didn't have a USB key at that time. So what he did, he said, I want to rewrite everything so that I remember everything. So he started to do that. But he was looking around him and some people dying and other people surviving. He says, why? Some people are surviving and others are dying. And he listened to them. Those that says, I'm never going to get out of here alive, died in less than 2 weeks. Those that says, I have to get out of here because I have family, my kids, my wife, they're waiting for me. They survived those camps. And they say this is what it's called the logotherapy, meaning. And he wrote a book says men search for meanings. So this is key to athletes. This is key to everyone. What what are you looking for?
Mm.
What makes you happy? What makes you say at the end of this life that is yours, there will be only one thing left. That will be your souvenir, what you remember. And you'll sit down with your little grandchild, your grandchild, and you put them on your tie and say, "This is grandpa's life," and you explain your life. This is the story of your life. All we have to do at the end is we are all here for the same reason. You know, the existential question that everyone is asking: what is human being doing on Earth? We asking those questions. It's, I mean, that's why there's so many religions that are asking this question, and maybe there's another life after this one. I don't know. Just in case there's not another one, let's make a big, huge party out of this one. And if we come back, Mark, we'll make another one. But for now, the only life that I have is the one that I have right now. That's a privilege that's been given to me. And the worst thing that can happen to a human being, it's quite simple, is when you are on your deathbed, dying, and you're all by yourself because you didn't love any people. You just were all about yourself. You hurt a lot of people, and you're dying all by yourself. That is probably the worst human feeling or emotion that someone can have. This is the worst moment that you can have. You're dying and you just look back at your life, look back in your life and say, maybe I did it wrong, but it's too late now. Because the real question of existential question is, what are we doing here on this planet? Well, I have the answer. I know it looks like
Sylvain, what drives you today, day to day?
it's to make that souvenir album. We're all here for scrapbooking. That's it. At the end of my life, the only thing that will be left will be what I remember from this and what I can share. This is the storytelling of my life. At the end of my life, I'd like to sit with my child, my grandchild, and say, hey, I had a hell of a ride. It was a hell of a ride. I met a lot of people. I love so many people. I lived my life like was full. And you know, when you look at Frank Sinatra's song, it's exactly what it has to be. You know, it's never going to be perfect. It's okay. And at the end, I will look back at my life and say, I was loved. I loved a lot of people. And as you do, I also wrote a lot of poems. I do poetries. I do a lot of that because it's a way of sharing things that is close to my heart.
Mm.
And all of human being, we need to love and to be loved. And that part of at the end, people that are telling you how much you love them because you share and you share love with people, that makes a hell of a great life. At the end, you know, it doesn't matter who you were, if you were a great baseball player, or because every athlete's like yourself. The only reason why you're there is because you become a model, and there's a responsibility that comes with that.
Mm.
When you become a top athlete that are younger kids are looking at you, you got to be a model to them. But in our days, this is sad, but this is true. In one day, we got more information coming to us than a human being used to have 100 years ago. There is computer, there's news, there's so many things that are coming to us. And the sad thing is that 86% of everything that is coming to us is negative, and only 14% is positive. If you read the newspaper, if you look at if you watch TV, look in the internet, you'll see most of the things are negative, and only 14% is positive. So we start to believe that the world is going wrong, but that's not true, because the media are looking only for things that are sensational, sex, or if there's blood. If there's no blood, no sex, no. If it's not sensational, they're not going to talk about it.
Right.
If yesterday on the street a young man killed a woman to steal her handbag, I swear to you, tomorrow we're going to have his picture and his name in all of the newspaper and on TV and radio. But in the same time, at the same exact time, 2 blocks away from there, there's a young man with a gesture of love and caring, help another old lady to cross the street.
Mm.
His name and his picture will never be anywhere. So why don't we decide as human beings to say we're never going to publish people that do bad, but we're going to make the name of those who do good things resonate everywhere. We're going to put their names and the pictures everywhere. So now we have model for our young kids and our new society that we want to build together.
Speaking of model, speaking of what's close to your heart, speaking of storytelling, as I've mentioned in the introduction, you've worked with so many elite athletes and celebrities. Is there a player or a program that really stands out in your mind as a meaningful moment, a breakthrough story, or success that we could shed light on? That's not the bloody story. That's not the bad story. Is there one through your time in working with a team or an athlete or celebrity that, wow, that person or that team was really good?
When I met with Tiger Woods, I was impressed by how much pressure he had on him, and I started to do the testing with him. And they said it's going to take some time to give you a report. He said, "Don't worry." He had a lot of people waiting for him, but he said, "For me, the most important is to be with you here, and I'll take all of the time it takes for me to understand what you're giving me back." So I felt like, wow, he's giving me that much attention as he was so busy and but wanted to know everything, and I saw how smart he was. So you don't become a top athlete by being dumb. You become top athletes by being also smart. And when I met with Mario Lemieux, you have to remember this kid didn't speak English. He was drafted in the NHL, moved to Pittsburgh from Montreal, from a very poor family, and he became the best hockey player in the world. And when he was drafted, his agent says, "Don't put the sweater on because we are not finished negotiating your contract." So you see a kid that is only 18 years old, got drafted in Pittsburgh, didn't put the sweater on because his agent said so. So people start to say, "Well, this kid has got a big head." It was not the case. He was just listening to his agent, and it was a wrong advice from an agent not to protect his player by say put the jersey on because at the end we're going to finish this in in a very not in public. And when Mario had cancer, um, he had Hodgkin's cancer. They say that he would probably never play hockey again. But on the same day that he has chemotherapy, chemotherapy for cancer. The same day he played that night and he scored 3 goals. So that to show you how strong he was. Went through cancer. Um, he had delivered babies and one of his kid was a premature baby, the younger one, Austin. And he stood and they thought that he would lose him, and he put all of the things to take care of him, decided to retire. And and after 4 years of retirement, he says, "Well, I'd like my son to see me play hockey." So after having cancer and back pain, because the reason why I was involved with him because he had back pain, and all of his life he played with back pain, and I helped him, in his comeback. When he came back to play, he started to play in uh, December 27th, and on the same year, he won the first scorer of the NHL. So only with half a season, he still finished first scorer after 4 years of not playing. And the team couldn't pay him back um, because they were going bankruptcy. He took back the team. He became an owner of the team. Draft um, Marc-André Fleury, who became one of the best goaltender ever, and he won the lottery by picking um, Sidney Crosby. So this guy went through everything, you know, illness, tough time by being only 18 to be drafted and not to speak English and also not wearing the jersey. Had cancer, played the same night that he had chemotherapy, score goals like crazy. Came back after 4 years, became the best, and this became the owner because they couldn't pay back him back. Make this franchise of the NHL, one of the best franchise. He did all of that and being so humble and nice. It reminded me of a song, always be humble and nice.
Right.
Um, and that's to me, to have the privilege to be working with him, and it's a privilege that I'm really happy. And also when I say Celine Dion, which is huge, Celine told me people are always asking me how did I get to the top. And listen to that, Mark. You're gonna love this one.
Mm.
I said, she told me, she said, Sylvain, people are always asking me how did I get to the top. And I said, I didn't get to the top. I went down. She said, when I was 12 years old, my head was big like that, and I was not even touching the ground. I had my head in the in the cloud, and I was on a cloud. But my family, 14 kids, my family, my mom, and Renee, his agent, they took her by the hand and they took me down one step at a time to make me grounded, to make sure that I was grounded, that I didn't have a big head and I was grounded. And she says, you know what? That's the reason why I'm still alive. I have never been as grounded as I am today.
Mm.
And that's exactly what I told you before. Those of them that lose their self-esteem, their self-confidence, who they are, their self-identity, they don't know who they are personally. They are uh, sick, and to fill that emptiness, they kill themselves without without wanting to kill them, but they kill themselves because they're suffering. So to me, when I look at these people having a lot of success and being so much down to earth, it's driving me crazy. The Prince Albert of Monaco didn't have to help me like he did. So was Celine or Mario Lemieux or Tiger. And also in my life, I'm always asking myself, how come do I come across great people like you, Mark? And I am. When I talk to you, I was so impressed with what you've done, and the kind of person you are, and how much you look and search for goodness and happiness and helping people. I said, wow, you don't have to do that, but you do that because you know that by helping others, you're helping yourself, and that's so important. When you're helping people, always ask yourself who's helping who, and at the end of the day, I think that's why I wanted to talk to you this morning and share this with people. But I'm very privileged to have this opportunity to talk to you. First of all, I was privileged to learn your language, so it opens a lot of doors.
Mm.
My first language is French, and I didn't know English before I was 19. And even though my French is like as I speak English like a Spanish cow.
Eh, Sylvain, thank you so much for what you said. I mean, all those stories are so amazing. Since you brought up Viktor Frankl and the man's search for meaning, I think it's important to just talk about how he says everything can be stripped from a person except their attitude, to persist and to hope and to live. One of the questions I want to ask you, and then we'll wrap up because I know that I could speak to you all day, is about groundedness and about suffering. I'm sure as you've climbed the ranks, whether it was personally or professionally, you either been attacked by business competitors or had personal hardships. Could you answer a two-part question? One, are there any hardships that really stand out in your life that really helped you develop the kind of groundedness and humility that I'm looking at right now?
Well, I think the first one was that I had problem in school when I was younger. My problem in school, I was so didn't want to talk about them because I didn't want to say when people were talking about school, I wouldn't say anything because I failed. So I was like in grade 4 instead of being in grade 3, in grade 3 instead of being in grade 4. So I would pretend that I didn't want to talk about schooling or anything like that. And to me, it's funny that today I'm talking to you with two doctors, and that I went all through those studies, but because I started to believe in myself with someone that something that was said to me by someone. So that probably shaped who I am today because of all those problems that I went through. But also, the thing is that I think in business there's never an easy day.
Mm.
Uh, to be a CEO of a company, people are saying, well, you're lucky, you make a lot of money. And it has nothing to do with luck. It has everything to do with hard work and not a lot of white night. You don't sleep much because you're worried, you're always on the edge. And it's pretty much like a big sports player and athlete. Um, you're always scared of not performing the way you should, and that keeps you on the edge. And I think that's what I learned a lot from sports. And I really believe, Mark, that a lot of very good athletes become good um, in business because of that sense of perceiving and failing and raising up and going on anyways, even though it's hard. So I think that's what I've learned from those two parts. The part that my learning problem that I had in a young age, and also today by being a CEO of a company that has a lot of challenge to face.
The next question I have for you is probably a tough question, but since you and I both love high performance, I would love to ask you about misconceptions about what people are putting a lot of gravity and weight towards that not necessarily matter as much as something that's oftentimes overlooked. So when I pose that question to you, is there anything in high performance that right now athletes, teams are really, really focused on when they perhaps shouldn't be? And is there something that's perhaps a little bit more unknown, but should get more light?
Mark, I think performance has a lot to do with how you evaluate that. Um, I always believe that athletes always perform better when they're happy. And if it's not the case, I don't know why we should do that. I mean, performance for performance, if it's at the price that you have to pay is your health or your family or anything like that, it it's not worth doing it. So that's why I think performance has always to be fun and laughing and having. And when it's not fun anymore, why would you do that? Because we say we play sports, we don't work sports. You say, I'm telling you, hey, you're a great player. You're not a great worker. You're a player. You're not working. You should be having fun. Play, it has to be fun. It should be for our kids as much as older kids. Every time they're calling me, when I have to do sports psychology with top athletes in the NHL or NFL, whatever, the first thing that I tell you, they always say the same thing. Doc, hey doc, I think I lost my confidence.
Hmm.
I'm in a slump right now. It's not going too well. And I say to them, okay, wait. I have one question for you. When you were 12 years old, what was your biggest dream? Well, my biggest dream was to play in the NHL. So I say, okay, hang up the phone and start singing and dancing and jumping all over the place because I have to tell you, you're an NHL player right now. So shut the fuck up.
Mm.
And then they realize, I'm sorry about the fuck that I said.
It's okay.
Beep. And I said to them, shut up. You are an NHL player. Start having fun. And then, okay, it's not going too well right now. There's a reason for that. You forget to have fun and just be who you are. When
Right.
did you ever have success in your life? They say, well, I was happy and everything seems to be so smooth and fun. So why don't you come back? Because you have to reframe your thinking. Why? If you say, I'm not stressed, I'm not stressed. No, I'm not stressed. I'm not stressed. Your brain takes away I'm not and always keep stress. Because if you're not stressed, you wouldn't say that. Your brain says, hey, stupid, if you want to stress today, you wouldn't talk about stress. Why are you talking about stress? It's because you're stressed. So when I have to say to my brain, I have to say to my brain what I'd like to have and not what I don't want. So a brain is like a 3-year-old kid. To me, that's exactly like that. So my brain is like a 3-year-old kid. If I'm walking around with a 3-year-old kid, and I see that there's water here, uh, 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 how do you say that? Un trou d'eau. Uh, I'm walking and there's water on the street. Okay, there's a
Huddle.
small puddle. Yeah, and I see, don't jump in it, don't jump in it. He didn't even see it first, but now that I told him that's where it is, he's gonna jump in. So when I say to my brain, I'm not stressed, well, the brain says, oh, I'm stressed. Let's having fun with your stress here. You're gonna be so a lot of anxiety. I have to say to my brain, I'm calm. This is fun. This is a great challenge. This is so fun. That's what I've been dreaming of all of my life. I'm here now. Let's enjoy it. It's a ride. Wow. That's
Yeah.
how we have to see performance. We have to see performance in a sense of having fun. If there's no fun in performance, why performing? You want to do that for to be famous? You want to do that to make more money? Why is that so? I remember one of my athletes in the NHL was on a it was supposed to sign a 1 or 2 year contract. The 2 year contract was a bit um, lower in sense of the money.
Mm.
In the 1 year, he wouldn't have more money at first, but then he would play this year as being his contract year. And you
Hmm.
know that as a professional player, that your contract year is a year that everybody hates that year. That you hate that because you want to perform because this is my contract year and it's gonna the stats are showing that I can sign for another bigger. And I said to my athlete, sign the 2 years because this year you're gonna play like hell because you're gonna play like wow, this is gonna be so great because you won't think about your contract.
Mm.
Next year you're gonna be thinking about it. Show what you can do. This is a showcase here, and that's what he did. And that's I'm always telling them, do that all the time. Don't try to get upfront money and put a lot of stress on you because you'll have plenty of time to make a lot of money when you have success. But if you're stressed and you cannot have success, you'll see it's tough to get
Yeah.
down the hill and it's nice to go up. And I remember when I tell them, start having fun and jumping and having, and I remember one of the kid that I helped, his name is, he played with the Penguins Pittsburgh and his name is Maxime Talbot. Maxime scored 2 goals in the final of the Stanley Cup. It was not Sidney Crosby, it was Maxime Talbot. So Max came to me and says, Sylvain, I just got, um, uh, I just moved to Philly. I'm gonna go play with Philadelphia. Okay, and he said to me, I'm gonna be overpaid. They're giving me so much money. I'm gonna make twice as much money that I did in Pittsburgh. I said, listen to me, Max. No team pays people too much. Because you're worth for them. That's how much
Mm.
money they think you are worth. Because there are smart people. They don't pay people too much. Do you know why this is the team they want to pay that much? Because you've been on their case for so long. You are a pain in the ass. When they play against you for so many years, they say the worst player that you play against, you want to have him in your team. And they say that's why they're going to give you a lot of money. And I said to him, I said, how come you're the one who scored 2 goals in the final Stanley Cup? He says, because every time there's a goal, a very important goal, I'm always telling myself on the bench, okay, I'm going to be the one that had to score the goals. I have to go and score the goals. And I said, what happened? He said, I scored the goals. I said, okay, now all you have to say to yourself, this every single shift is like a final of the Stanley Cup.
Right.
Play like that and think like that, and you're going to be okay. And that year, he scored more goals than he ever did before. Why?
Yeah.
Because he had that thinking of saying, hey, now it's every day that I have to
Yeah.
be great like that.
I would go even further. I don't even think it's thinking. I think it's believing. I think his
Yeah.
belief system right there is off the charts. Sylvain, well, you have so many stories, and you continue to um, do this at such a high level. If you were to look back at yourself when you were first starting, what advice would you give to that young, aspiring professional? What would you say to them? What is something that you know now that you wish you knew then?
Enjoy, because it's going to go really fast. Enjoy every moment. Enjoy. And take some time for yourself. Don't always work and work and work. Just enjoy and have fun. And you know what? Don't take it too seriously. Don't take life seriously. Don't just enjoy. I was too serious. I was too busy. I was too for so many things. Sometimes I was with people, but my brain one was not there because I was thinking too much. I was afraid of losing, afraid of bankruptcy, afraid of not being good enough, afraid of so many things. I was afraid. And when I look back, I just laugh and say, It was a nice ride, but I should have enjoyed more. I just didn't know how to enjoy. And what I'm telling every young player and every young CEO or every young women who have an idea of getting, I am so impressed by young women today, what they became and who they are, and how we should. I name a woman the CEO of my company. When I wanted to have someone take care of my business, I named a lady as a CEO. She didn't have any experience in what I was asking her, but she said, "I'm going to take care of your people." My people was 80 people, and it was my family. They were not employees of mine. They were my friend. They were my brothers and sisters. So to me, I just wanted someone who would take care of them, and I named a woman in charge, and it was the best thing I've done in my life to name a woman. And Mark, I'm sorry to say, but in the world of sports, there's a lot of people who think, men and men and men, we got to learn so much from women. And Krishna Varsari, I admire her so much.
Likewise.
Uh, for what she's done. Can you believe she's a woman from Brasilia and she came to the States, became the best the best from far in her field. She built that great school where she's teaching people and all kinds of people to learn the language, to go in sports psychology. This woman had made the two of us to meet,
Right.
and I will be thankful for everything she's done in my life. She changed my life completely, and that's why I think we should make a lot more space to women in sports and every business and everywhere, because we got so much to learn from them. And I hope that we will live one day that we're gonna have who knows, maybe a president of the United States to be women, or I mean they deserve that, and it's time for them to shine. I'm not saying that men are no good, but be a man who has a heart of a woman, being a mom, being a caring and loving, and that's what we need from people who are um, guiding us.
Yeah, I think what comes to mind for me is you brought up earlier that more men need to cry, right? And
Yeah.
I look towards my mother, my sister, Dr. Christina Versari. Just strength, right, is the word that comes to mind. I have this band on for the One Love Foundation that says hashtag Love Better. Is clearly you're not shying away from it, and I'm not shying away from it. It's so important to talk about love. I think it's the only thing that will heal the kind of problems that we're talking about. And yeah, there's an extension of having fun and happiness and joy that comes off of that word, but it really comes from the strength of that word, love. And uh, I have 12 more questions for you, but I probably should wrap it up and with two more. And the first one would be, if I knew you better, is there a question I should have asked you, right? Is there something that I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
Ah, I think you know me quite well because I'm very open. What you see is what you get. Um, I think the question you should maybe ask me is, where do I see life going? Like in a sense of, I look back, United States, what was my second country, and when I look at the tension in between the parties and people, and it makes me sad. And I wish that one day you would all come together and love one another and say, okay, let's stop having um, two separate people and be open to one another and listening and getting closer. I think um, this crisis, this COVID-19 has put us apart in a sense.
Hmm. Yep.
Physically we had to go apart and wear a mask, and I hope that this will teach us something, that as we were apart and wearing all those masks and not see people smile, that we will learn from this, that what has missed us the most was the smiling face of people, and nice gesture and being close to one another, to heal one another and to listen and to be open to new ideas, to new opinions, to the difference. I wrote a last book that I wrote is the name is The Power of Our Difference. So in a team in Krishna Varsari, I've shown that by the testing she's done in players and teams that show that the teams that were made more of the different personalities have more success. So our society is exactly the same.
Mm.
I learn a lot more from people that are different than me than people that think exactly like me. So every time there's a conflict that comes in, just ask yourself, what am I learning from this conflict and why is it there? And how can I be open to that person? Even though I don't agree with that person, how can I be open and still love this person, but for who she is, not for her opinions or things like that are not exactly like mine. And I think if we do that, the country is going to get together in a better sense. Not only your country, but it's all around the world. It's the same
Yeah.
thing everywhere.
That-
So we try to distance ourselves from people that are different than us. And actually, it's the opposite we should do. The more different people are getting together, the stronger is a nation.
Yeah, when we look at the individual, their holistic health is so important. But when we look at the community and the world, the holistic, integrative, and interplay of everybody is probably where the most power is going to come from. I want to wrap up by asking you, as I've asked every single person that comes on here, how would you define greatness? What does greatness look like to you? And I also want to bring in the second part of this podcast and ask you what you're most grateful for.
Greatness for me is a child heart, because when we are young, we don't judge people. We live the moment in the present moment. When you look at a kid and just what he needs is love, and all that he's asking for is love. A kid is what I'd love to be. I'd love to become a kid and have that um, pure pure heart of being loved and asking to be loved. And to me, I wrote a poem in French that it says, "Did you ever love enough to be to forget that you had sorrow?" And in French, this poem says at the end, all we're asking for is love. So, as-tu déjà aimé assez pour pardonner, pardonner même à l'étranger, étranger avec toi-même, toi-même est-ce que tu t'aimes, t'aimes-tu assez pour oublier qu'on t'a fait de la peine de ne pas être aimé, aimer sans demander et demander qu'à être aimé. So the poem goes like, all we're asking for is to be loved, and you will have sorrow, and forget that you have sorrow. Can you forgive people? And could you forgive yourself? Could you just ask for love and love people without asking in returns? Just love of loving. And when that is done, we know that we got back to our childhood kind of heart. Because I was there in 9/11 in New York, and I was supposed to be in the two tower, but I was in the Madison Square Garden instead. And this is all a new story that you have to call me back so that we do an interview just on that. But I remember the day of that day, New York became the best place to live on earth was on September 11th. Everybody was helping each other. Everybody was loving each other. It was in a tough time. And I'm always asking myself, why do we wait until we get tough time to realize that we are brothers and sisters and just being loving one another? And the September 12th on that year of 2001 was the greatest place to be, was in New York. Everybody was talking to each other and they loved each other. But on the 10th of September, when I got to New York, I was all by myself in the middle of millions of people. No one talked to me. I was all by myself. And then everything changed in a moment when those two towers were attacked. And then we feel scared and we feel that, wow, now we need to rely on one another and helping one another and helping each other. And it changed my life that I realized that I was supposed to be there, and I got a second chance. I got back home, cried like crazy, and wrote a poem on why are we at war? Why is that? Why can we share this planet all together and be, just be brothers and sisters? And I know it sounds crazy, and people will say, "Well, this guy believes in God, believes in this and this and this." You know what I believe? I believe in human beings great intention of just being and helping one another. And in our life, we know those people. We know who are there like that, and we hope that everyone will come up and say, okay, how can we help one another? And to me, I had a second chance because I was supposed to be in the two tower and I wasn't there because we had 68 players instead of 63. That's the reason why they changed my room. I was supposed
Wow.
to be there, and I lost three friends in those in that on that day, and it changed my life to say, okay, now every day is like a bonus day.
Mm.
So why would I not be happy? I don't have, and sometimes in life we got different people, great leaders. Yeah, it's one person out of five that are great leaders. One out of five. So it's 20% of the people around are great people, and they're there to help one another. There's 60% of us. 3% out of five, they follow other people. That's all they do. They follow in life. They are not great leaders, but they will follow. They're great followers. And 1% out of five, they suffer from an illness that I call la rectomyopie. They have the optic nerve branch in the derriere, and all they see in life is shit. And they make everybody shit and be unhappy. If you're one of those, change. Change. If you're one of those people who are always negative and pulling people down, change. This illness can be cured, and it can only be cured through love.
Thank you so much, Sylvain. I want to say, I oftentimes say this C.S. Lewis quote on friendship that goes, "What? You too? I thought I was the only one." And I haven't known you for a long time, but I feel like I do. I want to thank you so much for coming on. I know we could talk for hours, probably days, but you gave listeners something really special, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on here.
Thank you so much, Mark, for having me here and asking me all kinds of great questions that are deep down questions, not just on the top of things, but we went down deep to what really mattered in our lives. So thanks so much.